Hello, a warm welcome from Munich. My name is Christian Hummel. Welcome to our session, How to Monetize Car Data, Time to Drive Insights into Action. I'm here with Nicolas Kiefer and Christian Kohlhaas, two managers from our Capgemini Invent practice who are working on monetizing data and setting up digital business models. And I'm very happy also to be here with Rob Willekes, with Autonomo. So Rob's been a business development manager with Autonomo. Rob, tell us a little bit about what Autonomo is and yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having us here. We're really happy to join this session. So Autonomo is a car data services platform. We've been in business for 5 years. We had a big milestone last month where we went IPO and now are a public company at the Nasdaq. And that creates a lot of possibilities for us in this market, but also as a company. And we'll talk a little bit further about that in the presentation.
Very good. So we're going to talk about 3 things today. First, give a little bit of a market overview, and then to see what are the challenges and and how to monetize data and really set up those business models. And then we're going to see 2 real life examples. But Nick, let me start with you. So I've heard, regarding car data a couple of years ago, big numbers. I think it was in the trillions, and now it's toned down a little bit. Yeah. Give us a little bit of an overview. What kind of potential you see in the market?
Yeah, you are absolutely right, Christian. So we have done a lot of secondary research in the past to know what the market estimates are. And what we've seen are really huge differences. So for instance, we've seen figures for 2030, the overall car data market, a revenue potential of 33 billion euros. But at the same time, we have seen, for instance, estimates of 750 billion euros. So a huge gap. And why is this the case? Well, data by itself has no value. You have to put it into context and to derive insights from it to give a value to data. Sounds really theoretical, but let me give you an example. So the seatbelt status, that's just a data signal which we can get outside of the car. But I don't know anything, so just if someone is buckled up or not, there is no value in this information right now. But if we have a context, so for instance, in case of a crash or accident, we add this data signal, seatbelt status, to speed and crash severity, then insurance companies, they can derive a huge value from it because they know exactly what happened if someone was buckled up, and they can determine better the insurance sum. So huge value for them here. And that's exactly how we determine the value or the revenue potential of car data. We look at context, we look at use cases, external use cases and internal use cases. And we are sure that by 2025, we have in the European market a revenue potential of definitely above 1 billion euro. Now, if we look at the status quo, we are not there right now. So right now we have approximately 13 million of revenue potential, which we see. And that is what we know from our automotive clients. But there's huge growth potential, as I mentioned, and we are sure the market is now at a tipping point.
Okay, very, very high potential. So, Rob, why do you think there is such a big growth potential? What's your take?
Yeah, I think if we look back also in the history of Autonomo, in the beginning there was not a lot of data that's being shared. There were not a lot of parameters. The density, so the number of connected cars was also limited, and we see them both coming up. So OEMs are now willing to share more parameters. More parameters means more use cases. Think about friction data, think about hazard data, and then also the market that uses the data. If you look at the insurance, for instance, we always thought it was the perfect use case. But the reality is that a lot of insurance companies were a little bit conservative in rolling out these new ways of insuring cars, micro-insurance or pay as you drive, pay how you drive. And we really see that now picking up also because the market is being disrupted by new entrants into the insurance market. the big companies cannot be lagging behind anymore. So I think it's twofold. It's supply of data, good data, that's opening up more use cases, and also the use of data by the data consumers, as we call them.
Great. So Nick, give us some real life examples, what you already see in the market.
Yes, sure. So Rob already mentioned it. The insurance companies, they took some time in developing actual services, but now they are there. And for instance, we see Bonus Drive by Allianz, we see Telematic Plus by Huckebuck. Those are insurance schemes, pay as you drive, pay how you drive. And really interesting that they are starting now with those services. And you may say, well, in Germany, I don't have pay how you drive, pay as you drive insurance. Yes, in Germany, we are really in an early adopter phase. But if we go to markets like Italy or the UK, we see that there is a significant share of those insurance schemes. So insurance industry is one part. But for instance, there are other use cases which are now put into practice. For instance, you, Autonomo, you partnered with Weather Optics to bring a use case to life that is called Ride Route. And that's for logistic companies. You have to say that 25% of all shipments are delayed due to weather conditions. And Ride Route now does the following. So it combines vehicle data with weather data. And in the end, you can better determine the perfect route for the logistic carrier. So really adds value.
Yeah. So Rob, how are you gonna, participate with that growth? What's your plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just alluded a little bit about our IPO, and that IPO, it creates a lot of possibilities. I'm coming from the Netherlands, and we had a famous soccer player, Johan Cruyff, and he also had very nice quotes. And he said, a bag of money doesn't score any goals. So, that's money is nice, but what are you going to do with it? How are you going to invest it? That's, I think, a crucial part in our journey.
Well, now you gave me, the right attitude. So how are you going to spend it? Where do you plan to invest?
So I think we're going to invest in a couple of customer segments. So I think one of the biggest segments that we see is the fleet segment. We just signed a very big customer yesterday, LeasePlan, one of the biggest lease companies in the world. And what they are looking for is not only they want to know things about the driver, but they want to know the context of the car. And the context of the car starts with very simple things like odometer readings, but also maintenance indication light, kilometers to service, just the basic things to manage the fleet. So fleet is a key point for us, and we're investing not only in the market, of course, but also in our platform to onboard a lot of cars, but also have an interface that allows to onboard and defleet cars. And one of the big things with fleet is that it's personal data. It requires consent. And we are also working on a digital version of consent where we do a one-time odometer reading, where basically the one-time odometer reading has to be in line with what the customer brings in, and that relieves the customer from bringing in all the paperwork that would give the consent. So then the third part where we're really investing in is, and Nicolas, you already made a reference to it, data at itself is nothing without context. So we've built a app for Salesforce where we can take the data from a connected car, move it into Salesforce, and really getting the context of the car combined with the power of a CRM system like Salesforce, that you have and the customer and the car together. And you can do great things with it and manage your fleet in a very new way.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of data. I heard a lot about, the Gaia X and other, let's say, EU initiatives. So, Nick, what role does this play? Is this going to be a game changer?
Well, it's an important initiative, an important political initiative. Catena X is a part of Gaia X, and Well, the goal is to provide a data space for anonymized data. And at the same time to provide standards for the data collection and data sharing. That's really important because we need to avoid that there is a bilateral exchange of data, because then not everyone can participate and build upon services on this data. So from my perspective, it's a great initiative. And we see already use cases from that. So for instance, in the area of hazard warnings, so make roads safer for everyone. And for instance, in the area of smart infrastructure. And we have more than just that in Europe. We have, for instance, also from the Spanish government an initiative launched in 2018. And this initiative has the same approach. So also a data space for anonymized data. And all of that has always one goal: data for good. So reduction of accidents, as I already mentioned. And the Spanish government even has the zero ambition. Zero ambition means zero death, zero accidents, zero congestion, and zero emission.
So now we heard a lot about the potential of the market, but there are some challenges, I think, to be tackled to really realize that growth. So, Christian, can you tell us a little bit about this? What are the challenges? How do we address them and realize?
Of course, Christian. So we have heard it a couple of times. The market is at a tipping point. We see use cases coming in, successful use cases. So business who make value of their data and of their drivers' data. So, but when we look back to the data source, the car itself, the car makers, the OEMs, they are currently struggling with three areas, which we going to go into detail right now. So first dimension is the technological challenge. So as we heard, a modern car is providing massive amounts of data. At the moment, I think it's about 25 gigabytes an hour. When we look back in 5 to 10 years, when we talk about autonomous driving, we're talking about more than 4,000 gigabytes an hour, so massive amounts of data. And even with technologies like 5G, it will be quite a hassle for the OEM to decide which data is worth collecting and which data is not, because at the end, data collection is expensive. Secondly, regulations. So we heard a little bit about Catena X, Gaia X, but also from the lawmakers, we see multiple new laws and regulations coming in, which should simplify the access for third parties to driving data, to car data. And last but not least, organizations. So OEMs they know how to sell cars, but they do not know how to sell software data products. And this is why they really need to change their mindset and set up an organization which is able to sell those data products which are now available. So when we dig deeper to the first challenge, the technological challenge, we can go one step even deeper. So first of all, there is a missing data architecture. So it is really critical to identify which data is worth collecting, gathering outside the car. To give you an example, when I drive with my car from my flat to the office every day, the insights which can be gained by those data signals are quite low. However, when I change my patterns, this is when it's going to be interesting for OEMs, for third parties, and also for the driver somehow. So this is why we suggest that we really need some in-car analytics solution to decide which data is worthful and which not. When we look to the second challenge, undefined technical solution to comply with laws. So at the moment, a modern car is not able to 100% identify the driver itself. So this could cause that data will be collected from a driver who gave the consent. We heard it before. Because just when there is a existing consent, the OEM is allowed to extract the data from the car. And this could cause, in the worst case, a huge GDPR violation. And this is why OEMs are currently working on solutions such as iris scan, fingerprint, to really 100% identify the driver, to be sure that we extract just the data of the driver who's just sitting in the car and driving right now. And the last challenge, unclear approach to derive insights from data. So what we saw at a couple of our clients is when you use car data for internal use cases, such as product optimization process optimization. Excel lists, you can start some campaigns to collect data from the cars, and those Excel lists are just shared with the product teams so they can crunch the numbers. At that point, I really need to highlight that for those use cases, we really need some real-time analytics, powerful analytics tools to analyze those data, to really get those minor patterns, which I've mentioned before, to really make use of the data and to make it even more powerful for product optimizations.
Very good. Now, maybe for a little bit of a better understanding to your first point, Rob, you know, that huge inflow of data, I understand the challenge. So how do you evaluate the data, and how do you figure out what's valuable and what's important and what's not?
That's a great question. You know, the truth is in the field, so the truth is in the market. The people who want to use the data, we have quite a big customer set where we give the data in a sample, and we also ask for an evaluation. And the evaluation is very valuable because most data is, as Christian said, collected for different reasons than using the data. It's usually being produced as engineering data, as feedback data, so it needs some work. So we built a market together with the data consumers. They give us feedback around the quality of the data, around what they can do with the data, and we give feedback to the OEM, well, maybe you should up the frequency, get less latency, and it will fit the use case. And of course, as I mentioned before, there are new kinds of data coming to the market, which opens up new markets. And we really help the OEM by making a selection also, what kind of data is important and how can I make it even more important to the market.
And regarding regulations, so what kind of regulations do you see? How does it impact the market?
So, Christian, what we see in the market right now, especially in the EU and in the US, is that lawmakers are working on concepts to make data access more available, but to also protect the driver's privacy and data. So, which started a couple of years ago with the Nevada concept here in Germany, a concept which forced the OEM to use a neutral server to share their data with third parties, so to ensure equality, so that everybody can consume the data when the driver grants the consent, can be go to the next level somehow quite soon with the, for example, Data Governance Act, just to mention one initiative in the EU. So this initiative really forced the OEM to build a framework how data is shared in the future. So what does it mean? For example, it means that data access must be fair, transparent, non-discriminating. So I, as a car maker, can't decide who is allowed to consume my data and who's not. But also the data enrichment, so to make your data even more powerful, is not allowed because those proposals seem that they do not want the OEM to add the data. So the data should be transferred exactly as it comes out of the car to the data consumer. So this is something which could really limit the ambitious data revenues we saw at the beginning. But when we mention one example from the US, I just want to highlight the Right to Repair initiative. So the Right to Repair initiative started a couple of years ago, and with a bail just last year, the people of the state of Massachusetts decided to integrate connected car data, telematics data to this law. So every manufacturer who is bringing a car on the street of the state of Massachusetts is forced to share those telematics data with, for example, independent workshops. So I, as a driver, has the right to share my data then back with my independent workshop, and I do not see the need to go to the official workshop from my car maker. So those are just two initiatives which can be mentioned, and we'll see further initiatives coming up in all markets we're handling with telematics data.
Well, we have a quite, a list of regulations here. When do you think those are going to be in place? So what's the timeline?
So coming back to the Right to Repair example, so this is quite interesting. So the Right to Repair initiative started just 1 month ago with a, let's say, soft launch. And the lawmakers in Massachusetts are currently looking how it's going to be adopted in the market. But it will be forced with full power from the 1st January next year onwards. And when I say will be forced, we're talking about big fines. We're talking about multiple thousands of dollars per incident, which could easily be sum up to multi-millions in fines, which when the car makers are not complying with this law. So the question as car maker now is, what should I do? Should I really fight those laws because they are limiting my potential of data monetization, or should I just comply? So from my perspective, as all those initiatives are really needs from the customer. So I, as an end customer, I want my data to be free and that it can be shared with, for example, the independent workshops. So I would really highlight that data should be free, and I, as an OEM, as a car maker, should comply with this law and get early involved in the process of defining those laws and regulations.
Well, you were talking earlier about the organizational setup and so on and so forth, and we've seen how difficult it was for some of our clients, to comply with GDPR. Nick, what's your take? Do OEMs have the right organizational setup to tackle those challenges, technical, regulatory?
Yes, so we are of the opinion not now. So this is a huge challenge which you are addressing. So if we look at the current organizational setup, the current organizational setup follows the status quo of the business. You have to imagine it like, I would say, an iceberg. So right now we just see the tip of the iceberg. So I mentioned beforehand 13 million of revenue in 2021 for the overall market in Europe. So that's a really low amount. And so they have a real low strategic focus on monetizing vehicle data right now. And what we see then in the organizational structure is that they just expand or extend the current setup. They add a small dedicated team to their functional structure. And that's a huge challenge. Why is that a challenge? Well, the problem is we really need various disciplines to focus on this topic. You mentioned, for instance, GDPR and also antitrust laws. So a lot of legal issues are in this topic. So we need interdisciplinary teams. And if we then look at the future, we have to look below the waterline and see the whole iceberg. Because in the future, we will make not only really more revenue from vehicle data, it could also become a purchase decision for a car. So for instance, just take the case I mentioned, pay how you drive. In Italy, it's already a significant share. So right now, I'm consuming a pay how you drive scheme. And now I need a new car, but I have to pay less with my pay how you drive scheme because I'm a really careful driver. And so in the future, maybe my purchase decision is heavily influenced by services which I can get from vehicle data. And that's why we say we need to tackle this challenge. We need to change our organizational setup and towards a more agile organization where we combine disciplines like legal, like IT, and also the sales of vehicle data. That's really important for the future, yes.
No, that's very insightful. It sounds like a entirely different business unit, but anyway, we'll see. So thank you very much for the conversation so far. Now, I understand we don't only want to talk about things, but we also want to show some examples and some MVPs that we've developed. So let's go ahead.
Right. So thanks, Christian. So we also try to make our strategies and our topics tangible to our clients. And when we talk about car data, it could be a theoretical topic. However, it's quite easy to build value-adding services and products in quite a short time frame. So this is why we partnered up with Automotive. We use the Automotive data and develop two MVPs, which we're going to show you in a minute. So the first MVP which I want to mention is the charge predictor. So this service consumes anonymized swarm data from vehicles in, for example, a specific area here around in Munich. So we take the battery level, the GPS position, and the trip data to predict if a specific driver, how probable it is that a specific driver will drive to a charging station quite soon. And if not, we can give a recommendation which charging station will be free at a certain time. We also take TomTom Open API data to see where we have the charging station. And by combining those two powerful data sources, it's quite easy to know where I need to charge my car and where I can charge my car right now. And this is how it's going to look like.
You waste a lot of time finding free charging stations? Do you know that the solution is just one click away? With Capgemini's charging predictor, it has never been so easy to find your next charging station. Through powerful and predictive real-time data analytics, we combine personal vehicle data such as battery status, GPS, and driving behavior with data from other traffic participants and charging stations. This allows you to get real-time information about the nearest available charging station, and you can easily reserve the stations that are best for you. Where? Everywhere. When? Always. Sounds exciting? Join us in creating new and thrilling ways for data to fuel your future.
So this is just one example. When we jump to the next MVP, our fleet connector, it has been pointed out by Europe as well that fleet will be a big profiteer from embedded car data solutions. Why? The use cases are new, so fleet managers are used to work with data. However, the data and how the data got extracted from the cars, they use dongles. And when we talk about huge fleet operation with thousands or 100,000 of cars, it's quite a hassle to install all those dongles, those after-sales solutions within the cars. And now with Autonomo, with the data we get, we have the power to really get the data via the backends of the OEMs, so it's quite easy to consume the data. But what is even more powerful is when you combine car data with customer data. And this is what we have done in our next MVP. So we use Salesforce as our basis system, but you could easily change that to any other CRM, ERP system which you have in your organization. And we ingest with the Autonomo connector the Autonomo data, and this is how it looks like.
Are you a fleet manager? Which vehicles need to be serviced next? Where are the vehicles at the current time? Which drivers are currently on the road? Well, do you know that all these challenges belong in the past? It's just one click away to get accurate car data directly in your Salesforce environment. Our Capgemini fleet demonstrator, supported by Autonomo, allows you to manage your fleet at a glance through a user-friendly dashboard. This enables you to get real-time information about the vehicle usage 24/7, and you can contact your drivers directly. And all this is embedded in Salesforce. Want to know how you can use fleet data to drive your business to the next level? We at Capgemini help you create what's next.
Okay, that was just a glimpse of what you can do with car data. So my point here is, if you have car data, it's so easy to build valuable business service for your clients. So as an example, both of those MVPs took just a small team, some days, so we are not talking about big implementations as the systems are already in place. We have a connector to really get the data with one click. So it's quite easy to build value-adding services, and this is what we do for our clients. So sounds exciting, right?
Sounds exciting. No, thank you very much. I think that's, that was the insight for me to see. We've been talking about those business models for a long time, but, I understand from your presentation and from what I've seen, it's now really coming together and we're on the road to get there. Now, we are open for questions. I do have one question that is, how could you use data in your sales process? So how does everything that we've seen, we've talked about customer data, we've talked about vehicle data, how does that increase sales or customer satisfaction?
Yeah, I can go first. So a really interesting question, because what we've seen with the Salesforce connector, it is not just for fleet, one has to say, because in your CRM system, the combination of personal data of your customers as well as vehicle data is really a treasure. Because, for instance, in the sales process, as you mentioned, you can have dedicated campaigns targeted at customers who are driving intensively with a car. You could also know, okay, if there is a breakdown of a car, then you have a perfect NBA, NBO opportunity, because you could say, okay, I contact my customer, I create customer satisfaction by having the right next step and offering help maybe if he needs it. So there are a vast amount of opportunities where you can optimize the sales and after sales process.
And does that involve the dealer at all? So do dealers benefit from this?
Well, that's a good question. I think that for dealers, it's very important that they have information about the context of the car, because they know how many kilometers have been driven. They can get the customer into the shop for maintenance, for repairs. They can warn the customer that maybe there's something wrong with the car. So the contact between the dealer and the customer becomes much more close. It's not only selling the car and then in 3-4 years I'll see you again and try to sell you a new car. You get much more context about the driver behavior, the car status, and you could use that to do upselling, to get more customer centricity into your process. So it's a brilliant use case, I would say.
Very good. So that's, we don't have any, maybe we wait a little bit if there's any questions coming in. Otherwise I would...
I could probably add up to what Rob just said. So what is really the power by combining the car data within a CRM system, for example? So we talked about fleet managers, but a huge hassle for fleet managers is also how's the residual value. I mean, when we're talking about EVs coming on the market, we are unsure how the residual value will behave. But if you have the live data, I mean, every 2 minutes you get the data of the battery, of the odometer, of the driving behavior, then you can really predict the residual value at a specific time. So just thinking out loud of some use cases is when you know that your residual value is higher than you anticipated based on your calculations, you could easily make a next best offer to your driver, ask them to hand back the car and get probably a next best offer, right? And the other way around, when we see a driver, a heavy driver, high fuel consumption, so the residual value is a little bit lower than we anticipated. You can just ask him if he wants to extend his contract for another half year. So you really can optimize how the residual value, which will be a huge topic quite soon, how this behave, and you can really steer it with live data, which you otherwise would not have.
Yeah. It's just seeing one. We talked about the organization, within a company, but the use cases that you're mentioning are also, one of the prerequisites, I think, is a better collaboration between different companies. And do you have any ideas on that topic? How that's going to evolve?
Yeah. So partnerships with maybe very innovative startups are one way to go, because as you mentioned beforehand, Rob, the insurance industry, for instance, it took them really some time to come up with services. We expected them to be much quicker in the market, and there were some startups in this industry, and they were fast. And speed is really important here. And if you partner up with startups in this area, it's really helpful because you can maybe create an MVP. You can test the market, see how the market is responding to a new service, and I think that's partnerships are a great way to start off.
Right. Probably to add on what Nico just said, we saw a couple of times that even our automotive clients try to build those services by themselves. So we would really recommend to focus on the core, to get the data out of the car in a good quality, in a good frequency, and then, as Nico just mentioned, use third parties who can consume the data, who have way more knowledge, for example, in the insurance market, and to build up digital products. So focus on your core, get the data, because data is valuable itself. And then when you see that there's traction in the market, that more and more business models are successful, you can think about if you want to offer your service yourself. So this is just one recommendation we can bring up here to our OEM clients.
Does that require standardization or some kind of regulation to be able to talk to each other?
I think that's really something that we as Autonomo can provide to the market, because if you are a customer that wants to consume car data and you would like to have various brands, as most use cases use various brands, it's going to be quite a hassle to have one-on-one contracts with every OEM in the market. Think about the business implications on IT, on legal. It's going to take you a couple of years. So what Autonomo offers is basically, one connection to multiple OEMs. Get also the functionality from the platform. The fact that you can get consent management through our platform from the application back to the OEM means that it's also a GDPR compliant process. So I think that we can offer a big role in that by harmonizing the data, harmonizing the access to the data, and make it really easy to consume data from cars through Autonomo.
Now we have already talked about when you, in terms of automotive level 4 or 5, and I just have a question that's probably a little bit easier, I hope. So what about how do we overcome the data silos within an organization and make sure that we leverage data across domains?
Yeah, that's an organizational question, I would say, because what we really need is a consolidated requirement intake process. So we need to have a dedicated part in the organization which is focused on vehicle data, and everyone knows that. And for the engineering part, they know, okay, if I have a requirement, I have to go over this team. So we need a consolidated requirement intake process, and then to have the art release trains afterwards, where we make the implementation and then release those features. Yeah? So this is really important at this point.
And it's going to, this is another, I would say, huge topic to, I'd say, revolutionize the automotive design and how, OEMs go to the market. I've seen pictures of data backbones really from early engineering to the customer, or the other way around, so that the customer can see how sustainable a part's been produced, what the raw materials are, and so on and so forth. So a lot of opportunity. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and enjoyed the presentation. And I want to thank you, Christian, Nick, Rob, for the exciting discussion. And hope that the platform picks up even more, and we see a lot of huge data business models in the future. Thank you very much.